This video is gonna be insane. Not in an entertaining way, in a boring way. Just in case you haven't done so yet, check that runtime. Seriously, I'm advising you not to watch it. Definitely don't start watching it and then tell me it's boring in the comments. I warned you right here up front. If you stay, that's on you. Recently, I asked on Instagram if I were to teach a class, what would people be interested in learning from me? Don't worry about that question, it's not important. We'll talk about it later. Maybe. What is important is that a lot of the replies that I got were people saying, we want to learn your drafting, draping, freehanding process. We want to know how you get a garment onto fabric, start to finish, and how you problem solve along the way. So this isn't a class, but I thought I would try to give you that just for the people who want it. Even though my videos run long and I do leave in a lot of stuff, like all my random musings and working through tricky parts of projects, there is also so much of the process that I cut out, or I just don't even film at all because it would be too long, too boring. But today I am going to show you the whole process of taking a garment from my brain, getting it onto paper, and then transferring that onto fabric and getting it cut out. Unedited. I might change the camera angle up now and then, but once I get started, there will be no cuts. I will try to talk through what I'm doing the whole time. But also I'm not putting music on something this long, so there's gonna be just like long stretches of awkward silence probably. Watch at your own risk. Here we go. I've got over 4 hours of footage here and I'm really hoping, that this does not take any longer than that. Because uploading it would be atrocious. I'm already forgetting that I can't cut this. See, this is how it actually is. I just like pause in between sentences and stare at stuff. So if I am drafting a garment from scratch, here's what I bring out to work with. A measuring tape, a flat ruler of some kind, a pen that I know will mark on the fabric that I'm using. I use heat erasable pens, but I just make sure that it's like a color that will show up on that fabric. I do also have like water erasable pens and stuff, but I don't like them. I bring my scissors, I bring straight pens, and I bring a sketch pad and pencil to draw out my idea, take measurements, make notes, etc. This is the fabric that I've chosen to use. I actually did not get this at Remainders. Shocking. It's fairly thin. I do not know what it is. It's kind of cool. There's like a striped pattern on the back as opposed to the plaid on the front. But it definitely looks like this was, oh, it's actually like 2 layers. Ooh. What? Is it? I do not know at all how this was made. It's almost leaning towards like a gauzy feel. It's a pretty thin fabric, which is good to note right here at the start because that means we're gonna need to line this garment probably pretty thoroughly. I'm gonna have to turn down every time I take a sip of coffee for the people who can't stand swallowing sounds. There is a whole bunch of this, which is why I chose it. Also, I just didn't have any plans for it because problem solving, not having enough fabric is something that happens quite a lot in my videos, but I don't need that to be a problem today. We're gonna problem solve other things, I'm sure. So I was like, I don't wanna run out of fabric. I think there's either 5 or 6 yards of this. I'm not gonna measure it. So what are we making? We are making a split side dress. I also asked on Instagram if you guys would rather see me use woven or knit material. Woven just kind of barely eked out over knit material, which is why we're going with woven. Yeah. I don't have anything further to say on that. Y'all voted, woven won. Then I asked, would you prefer to see like a fitted garment that's going to require like a zipper to put it on or something? Or would you prefer to see something that is adjustable in some way, whether with elastic or some sort of split side adjustable form? And adjustable garment won by quite a lot. So recently I wore 3 of my split side dresses. This is one of them. This is my favorite of the ones that I've made. I found issues with all 3 of them. The issue with this one is really just how big the sash is. I usually tie it in front like this instead of tying it in the back because it makes such a big knot, especially when I wear this out. You get in the car and it's like, ugh, there's just like this chunk of fabric in your back, which I'm kind of realizing is a problem with most sashes unless they're really small. When you tie that knot in the back, it's just like there, squishing into your back. And actually, this is bringing back childhood memories because we had so many church dresses when we were kids with big sashes on the back. And I remember just having this knot in my back all the time. Good times. So that's kind of our number one problem across the board with the split side dresses I've made so far. The reason the sash is so wide is in an attempt to cover the whole side right here and make it an actual covering dress rather than more of a pinafore feel where these side pieces come down low and would show your bra if you didn't wear anything underneath. A lot of people love the split side dress concept as a pinafore, as something to throw on over a top of some kind. I don't like layering clothing. I want to put on one garment in the morning. So that was why I wanted to work on making it more dress-like and more fully covering so I don't have to wear something underneath. The other 2 had kind of that similar problem as well as some like fit issues, etc. This is why I'd like to make another one. I would like to give another stab to the split side dress and just see if I can kind of work out a better version. That's what we're going to try to do. Let me refresh. I will throw drawings up on screen here. So here's what I'm thinking. I want to do sort of a higher crew neck-ish, probably a little bigger than a typical crew neck, because when you are using a non-stretchy fabric, you can't really do a full-on crew neck because you can't get it over your own noggin. So big enough that I can get it on, but not like a full scoop neck. Yeah. I want to just do a simple dropped shoulder on this rather than like sleeves of any kind. And then, are we gonna do a circle skirt? We're probably gonna do a circle skirt, especially since I have a lot of fabric. Of course, with the split side dress, you always have or at least I always have, the pockets that are attached to the back half. It would be kind of interesting to do like a V waist on this because I haven't really done that much. I wonder how that would affect a circle skirt. Is this a problem I feel like solving today? Well, here's the more important problem. With the split side dress in a woven material, the number one concern right away is what do we do about les boobs if we got them? You can't just put a flat piece of fabric over you. Like this one is made out of a stretch material. This is actually a knit. So it's really easy to draft this kind of dress out of a knit material because this is literally just a flat piece of fabric and it conforms to my curves because it can stretch. Super handy. With this, we're gonna have to use either darts or gathering or piecing actual different pattern pieces that are shaped in order to fit around the curves of the body. And that's a thing I have to decide. So here comes the part where I'm silent for a minute while I just try to decide what I want to do. On one of them, I did sort of an underbust gather and then put a panel right here, which isn't bad. It's not really the style I'm thinking of. You can also just do like a looser fit that has kind of gathers at the waistline so that rather than gathering right under the bust, it gathers down here and you just sort of get a looser fit over the top. I don't know that I've ever done that on myself. I've seen that on garments on other people and been like, oh, it looks good on them. But then I'm always like, I don't know if that's gonna look good on me. I think I should do darts. I so frequently avoid doing any form of dart in my clothing. I'll do it more commonly if I'm making trousers. But up top, I usually avoid the dart thing, and I really don't know why. Because this is such a thin fabric, it also is going to have a lot of ease to it. So I think if I just did simple underbust darts, it would be enough. You know? Then, of course, the next problem we run into is how are the sides working? So if we did a regular dress that had a dropped shoulder like this, then our pattern piece would look like that. I'm assuming I'm throwing stuff up on the screen for you. Yay, I get to make graphics. But the dropped shoulder is kind of, I don't know where that thought was going. That's with it meeting at a side seam. We need it to tie in some way around us. And we also don't want that side seam to end right where a side seam would end, or it's not really adjustable. You know, then if you are bigger today or you're bloated or you're putting it on somebody bigger, then it's gonna pull that side seam forward and it's not gonna look proper. So the way that I fixed this with this dress was to literally add like a triangle of sash coming from the side seam, which is why this is such a giant sash. It's like this wide where it starts, and even tapering from there in a triangle, it's so much fabric. This is a pretty thin fabric and this is a pretty thin fabric, but it's so much fabric. It's not good. What would be more preferable is for the piece itself to taper down to a much smaller area, and then a little sash comes out of that. You still basically gotta have a sash. When it comes to the dresses, is there another option? Not really that I would wanna do. With the skirts, I've done stuff where like there's hooks and bars, and I usually only put one because I actually don't change size that much. I make a lot of adjustable clothing, but my weight does not fluctuate that much. It's more just so that if my weight does change in the future, I can still have all this clothing. And because I think adjustable clothing is good and we should have more of it. But you can line up like several bars, or you could do the same thing with like just buttons and a buttonhole, and you can, you know, close it here, close it here, close it here. On the dress, I don't know if there's an option like that that would really work. So I think we kind of are stuck with the sash. Now, what I did do when I originally tried sort of walk-away dress style of split side dress, with that one, the back piece layers on top of the front piece. So what you end up with is, like I've done with this dress right now, a sash that's being tied in the front instead of the back, which does save you that whole lump on your spine sort of thing, but is also just a different look. And I don't like it as much, is my point there. It would also be cool if this was reversible. Not inside out reversible, but just like back to front reversible. How complicated do I feel like making this? Let's start trying to break it down into the pieces that we need though, because this is actually how I do my drafting process. The first part is kind of doing a rough sketch of what the garment will look like, which is usually really bad because I'm not exactly good at drawing. But then I look at that and go, okay, where are the seams and what are the pieces making up that final garment shaped like? What are they going to look like? So you can start with the super easy stuff. We have a skirt here, which means we're going to have 2 skirt panels. If it's a circle skirt, they are going to look like half circles. Or they could look like quarter circles, but I'm probably going to go for a full half circle because I have plenty of fabric. So there would be one of those for the front and one of those for the back. Easy peasy. We've got 2 pieces written down. Good for us. Then you can write down the pockets because that's easy as well. I generally shape my pockets like this on split side clothing because they're getting sewn where that split is and they're providing coverage for that split. That would be 4 pieces. We would need 2 pieces for each pocket. That's everything from the waist down. So there we go. That's a start. Up top, we would theoretically need just 2 pieces. The way that I'm doing it, it would be a back bodice and a front bodice. Well, the sashes I'd usually cut out separately. So 2 pieces for the bodice. And then 2 of each of those pieces, because this is going to have to be lined. So the back is usually easier because it has fewer curves. So I start with that. Let's assume we got like a little crew neck at the top. We've got the dropped shoulder. And then the back piece comes underneath and ties in the front, or this one literally overlaps and snaps. You could do hook and bar. I've done like the bra closure things with all of the multiple hooks. Lots of different options for how you can do that. I will probably go with a simple tie. Now that's going under your clothing. So you want whatever it is that you're using for the closure to be pretty flat and not noticeable. You don't want it to be annoying up against your skin. You don't want it to create a weird lump through your clothing. So if you're gonna do a tie, you definitely want that tie to be really small. So if my normal back piece looked like this, am I? Yeah, I'm on screen. Then I would need sort of triangles coming from under the armpits. This might be a thing where the front and the back actually just look really similar, which might make it more interchangeable. The only thing that would make it not fully interchangeable is the placement of the pockets. That's true. That's the problem with trying to make a split side dress or even skirt reversible with the pockets the way that I do them. If you switch it, you end up with your pockets on the outside, which could be a look, I guess, but not necessarily a great look. I don't know, it's up to you. Yeah, so with the back, I want it to kind of fully come to a point, because I want like this big of a sash. Little, not even sash. It's just a tie. Ooh, there's another option. That would be annoying, potentially, but it's something I haven't done before. I will explain this in a minute, but this is my process, is saying half of my thoughts out loud and not the rest of them, which is why I always cut these sections out. Okay, so another form of adjustability, why am I itching? I think a mosquito got me. Another form of adjustability besides tying is lacing, which is a really fun look. It's kind of annoying because you have to sit there and lace something up, but it's a look that I like. It's not a deal breaker for like wearing a garment. It is interesting when I've made adjustable clothing that has lacing in some place, how many people will say like, yeah, but like that takes so long to lace up, it would have been easier to just put in a zipper. And I'm like, that wasn't the point. The point was to have a garment that will last a long time, even if you change size, because it can change size with you, not to save time. So here's the thing I'm thinking. If this front panel came around past the normal side seams, let's say to maybe here-ish, and then came down to like maybe this tall, because it would still slope, that feels about normal, then I could just put lacing on the rest of it. And I think that would be really cute. And lacing is like really, really adjustable. And I have not done a split side dress in that fashion before. I think this is what we're gonna do. Yay, okay. Which makes me really want to try the V waistline. I don't know why, but it does. Is V waistline and lacing in the back related to each other? I don't know, go with me here. Okay, so we were on our back panel, which is unchanged here. Sorry, I'm gonna try not to burp loudly, but like, welcome to my life. I burp very loudly all the time, and I cut it out of my videos. So I will try to keep my burps swallowed as much as possible. This is good. Now we're cooking with gas or whatever. Ooh, this is making me want to do some sort of like V in the back, but that's kind of unnecessary. You know what I really want to do right now, and I don't know why this is something I find myself doing when I'm like thinking hard about stuff. I so often literally like mount the table like this. This is weird, but seriously, I don't know. This is also stuff I cut out of my videos. Welcome to the actual process. I think I just have a need to like stand in weird positions while I'm thinking. Aren't you glad you're here? Those of you who have decided to stay. All right, so back panel, dropped shoulder, sloping. Ooh, this might be a pain in the butt to sew. No, no, it won't, because it's not attached to each other. Aha, Yeah. This is actually great. The good thing about lining a bodice is that you don't then have to think about how am I finishing all the edges? Am I binding them? Am I hemming them? Whatever. No, you just get to sew the two pieces together and you have a great edge. And when it's a split side garment like this, it's even easier because you're never connecting the side seams. So it's just, we'll get to that when we get to sewing. By the way, this was something I was going to note. I will be cutting again. I will be editing the video again when we get to the sewing process. Because you don't need to see me sew an entire seam to get that seam needs to be sewn. Yes? So the drafting process will be unedited. The sewing process of this garment, I will still try to talk through and everything, but we're gonna go back to editing at that portion. Make this video a little bit shorter. Woo! What I should not do is stand here for 5 minutes being distracted by the squirrels outside. Because I don't think that'd be pleasant for anyone involved. Well, it would be for me, because they're cute. Back on track. Getting distracted is also part of the process. We have our back piece. It looks like this. We're going to assign measurements to it in a minute, but we need to draw our front piece first. Part of the back piece would also be a little tie. You can draw this out so you remember to cut it out. And by you, I mean me. You don't have to do this process. People wanted to know what mine is like. You don't have to do it like this. I often forget to cut out like little ties and sashes and stuff. So just drawing the little rectangle of a piece is good to be like, hey, don't forget that thing. So I would need 2 of those to be the ties for the back piece. The front piece. We've got our scoopy crew neck, whatever it is. We'll see if I end up changing my mind on that. We've got a dropped shoulder. Easy peasy, lemons are squeezing. Then that dropped shoulder curves out, kind of just like it did on the back piece, but instead of trying to come all the way around like the back piece did, it's going to end at maybe 6 inches tall. I don't want to have it too tall in the back where it's tying, because more tying is more annoying. Less tying is less annoying. So maybe we'll aim for about 6 inches. So now here's a new thing that we need is we need a nice long rectangle that will turn into a tube and cut up to be the tie loops. We need another nice long rectangle that will be the tie itself. The only thing that I am not considering here is the darts, which would change the shape of this, because I've drawn it like this right now. That's not accurate. That doesn't have any of the shaping in there. It would actually have darts right here. Should have darts here? I don't know. I'm not very well versed in darts. I should watch a video on it. I'm pretty sure somebody, maybe it was Closet Historian. I don't know, someone did like a really good video on darts. I don't really like darts, so I haven't experimented with them much. We're going to attempt on this one to just do darts right here. And we're gonna see how that goes. So now I have my pieces. 2 skirts, 4 pockets, 2 front bodice panels, 2 back bodice panels, 2 little ties for the back, tie loops for the front that ties in the back, and a tie. Cool. I need you to stop itching. I like briefly went outside this morning and I think I got bit by a mosquito twice. We're having this very weird warm spell, like really warm. First thing in the morning, I opened the door and went out there and it was just like not hot, but just warm with warm wind at like 8 in the morning. It's very strange weather. I like it, but it's strange because this is coming out in December, but it's currently the end of October. I'm going to try not to tangent too much because Lord knows that means that this will be so much longer. Measurements. We have drawn our original design. We have split that design up into the different pieces we're going to need. Now we need to assign measurements to every single bit of those pieces. Again, start with the easy stuff. How long do I want my skirt to be? I don't really know. It is going to come to my waistline. That's kind of too long. That probably was like woo on the sound. Usually if I have plenty of fabric, I go ahead and make my skirts a little longer. I do this with everything. Make it bigger is my go-to thing. But especially when I have extra fabric, I just tend to make the skirts a little bit longer, and then it's like, I'll figure that out later. I'll cut it off where I want once I'm actually wearing it. People also do say that when you hang up circle skirts, the hem changes length and you should like let them hang for a day before you actually hem them. I'm gonna be honest, I did not do that until this year. I think this year, possibly with my patchwork dress, was the first time I ever let a circle skirt hang for 24 hours before I hemmed it. So, do with that what you will. I'm gonna say like at least 32 inches long. I might just do like 35 or something when I'm actually cutting it out. We'll see how I feel about it. Sometimes I change the length of my circle skirts. Ooh. I'm sorry. I just got another idea. This is, mid-sentence, I had another idea. Because you'll notice what I forgot to note is the skirt getting lined at all. This is really thin fabric. I think the skirt needs some lining. It's not fully see-through, but if I don't line it, it's gonna be one of those things where I like have to be wearing perfectly nude undergarments underneath. And I have told myself to stop making clothing like that because it annoys me having to like plan ahead on what are undergarments to wear. And I never want to change in the moment. Like, pfft, are you kidding me? So, this is the idea I just had. I don't really want to line the entire circle skirt. That would be so much extra fabric to cut out 2 whole circle skirts instead of just one. But what if I did like a tier? What if I did a tiered skirt and then I only lined the first tier? Because once you're past tier, you don't need lining on the rest. This is an idea. So in this case, I would just need 2 Let me finish my thought. In this case, I would need 4 half circles. But those half circles would only need to be, I don't know, let's say like a foot long? Not even that? Maybe a foot. Yeah, if I did 12 inches, then that's like right under my bootay. I never know where to put the like seams of tiered skirts. Like, is there some sort of mathematical equation? Is there some sort of rule for like where the different sections should be to like, I don't know, elongate the body or something? I don't know, so I just guess. So if my first tier is 12 inches long, then logically my second one would be 20 to get my overall 32 inches that I just had. Here's the thing with doing tiers on a circle skirt. Do you really want to do the second tier? There are words in my head. They're coming to the surface. Do you want to do the second tier as a circle as well? This is the problem. Ooh, what if I did Would that look weird? I feel like that would look weird. All right. There are 3 different options running through my head right now. Let me try to draw them all out for you. One is a typical tiered skirt, which is generally involving gathering at the tiers. You lightly gather each next tier to make it bigger. If I'm basing this on a circle, which granted I don't have to, this is what I did on my adjustable skirt that was like peach on the top, I think. Yeah, it was like a peachy color on the top with like floral fabric on the bottom. The top was a circle skirt, and then it had a rectangular gathered ruffle put on the bottom. It is a really fun look. When you spin, it like, it totally works. You do have to use an extremely long ruffle because the hem of your circle, even if you're doing it pretty high up, is just way longer than it would be if you were doing a rectangular ruffle. So I think ultimately, if I want to do a tiered skirt on this, I need to just do it rectangular instead of circular, because it's so much more fabric, even maybe too much for what I have to put, I'm running out of steam, to put a ruffle onto a circle skirt. So if I was doing it tiered, I don't want this to be maxi though. So I would maybe try to do 3 tiers, but still do kind of the length of this skirt, which again, if I said 32 overall, if the first one, basically that would be the first one is 12 and the second 2 are both 10. And this would be a bunch of rectangles to cut out, and this would involve a lot of gathering. Here were the other options that I was thinking of. You can also do like a tiered skirt that is not sewn to each other, like there are ruffles on the outside. You can do that by sewing ruffles to a base, but you can also do that by having just different lengths of skirt. So if we were doing 3, and I was doing circles, that would mean cutting out one entire circle skirt that is 32 inches, another entire circle skirt that is, let's say, 22 inches, and then another circle skirt that is 12 inches, and stacking them on top of each other. Now, what this gives me is lining without lining, because by the time you get up to here, you actually have 3 layers of fabric. This is also a good fabric to potentially do that with because it is so light. You don't want to do something like that with a heavier fabric. Even sort of what you feel like is a basic mid-weight fabric is going to be pretty heavy by the time you stack up 3 circle skirts. Ball gowns are like this sometimes, and that's why they have like hoop skirts and like structure underneath, because it's so much weight. So I could potentially do this. It would be a lot more fabric. And I don't know that I'm not sure that the look makes sense for like this plaid material that I have. I don't know. The third option for lining this skirt is to kind of dump the overall tiers option in general and just do a lining on the inside. It doesn't have to be the length of the full skirt, but it would just be sewn around the top, down the sides, and it would maybe be, I would do it a little longer in this case, so I'd maybe do it 16 inches long. And it would just be underneath, and there would be a circle skirt on top. Probably the most straightforward option, probably the one out of these 3 that is using the least amount of fabric. But do I want straightforward or do I want fun? Is forever the question. I will say if I'm doing either of these tiered options, I'm not going to do a V waistline with it. Am I? Probably not. Maybe if it was the rectangular one, it still wouldn't be that hard. But if it was... I'm so blatantly aware of how like long and convoluted my process is, and it's just lightly weird to be like, this is all going up. In fact, I should probably go stop and restart, just because if your footage gets too long, it takes forever to transfer. Here's what we're gonna do. I said that like I had made a decision. I really haven't. I kind of really want to try this whole ruffles on the outside version now. But I'm just afraid that if I do that on this dress, I will wear the final product less commonly. Like, I'm afraid that the overall design style does not go with this type of fabric, and it's gonna end up being one of those things that I'm like, oh, I really like this, it's super fun. But then, like, in reality, I don't really like it. Also, that means I have to hem 3 circle skirts. But I don't really like the rectangular tiered option for this. So I think I should at least dump that idea. And we should either just do a regular circle skirt with a lining inside, or we should do the ruffle one and commit to the craziness. I might not have enough fabric for the ruffle one, so I think I should lay out my fabric and decide. We were gonna do measurements, weren't we? That's been hijacked. We will come back to that. But I wanna see if I could fit 3 layers of circle skirt on this fabric and still have enough to cut out the bodice. So let's do that. Let me change angle. This is why this is not a tutorial or a class though, because that would require me actually like showing you good angles of stuff. So you can clearly see things. Nope, this is just an example of my process. I put a chair at the end of the table to hold all of my extra fabric so it's not pulling all the way down to the floor. This is very light and gauzy, which means it'll flow beautifully. Okay. So what did I say? The first tier would be 12, the second would be 22, the third would be 32. So obviously the first tier would fit very easily here, there, wouldn't take that much. I haven't yet done the calculation of the circle skirt thing. So right now I'm just like estimating. It's usually about 5 inches for me. But I'm gonna bump up to 20 inches just to give a guess here. So what I'm doing is I'm measuring from the corner because that's how far the circle skirt would come out. This is for the first layer. Now the other second layer I would potentially put from this side. Ooh, do I want to do that? Yeah, it's kind of fine. If you cut circle skirts on fabric like this, you cut your first semicircle from here where this is the fold. So it's a quarter circle, folds open into a half circle. If you then want to cut the other one coming from this direction, which is how you save the most fabric because your angles, that doesn't make sense. You can put it closer if you cut it from this side than if you cut it from this side, yeah? But now this is not a fold anymore, so that means that you have to have a seam on that side. If you're doing any kind of circle skirt, circle dress that has a zipper up the back, that works really well because this is the front, that's the back where the zipper is going to be. If you're doing one that does not need a zipper up the back, then you're just gonna have a seam in the back, no seam in the front, which is also pretty much fine. It's just something to note. Otherwise, you can just keep cutting all on the same side, so you just have the fold. That just is gonna take more fabric, which is not necessarily a bad thing if you're cutting out a lot of other stuff because you can potentially use all that extra fabric for the bodice, the sleeves, whatever. It just, you know, is gonna take more. So if I were doing that, then I would need 18, 18. That would just be for the top layer. The second one's 22. Oh, 22 plus 5. I gotta remember that. Let's just do 30. So then 30. So I'm doing like a very rough calculation right now of whether I would have enough fabric. 30 and 30. Okay, and then the final one I said 32. Let's just measure 40 to be extra careful. So 40 and 40. Yeah, so doing that, I did not run into the end of my fabric. So that's like the most, like the least fabric saving way that I could cut out this skirt with the 3 different tiers, and I would still have fabric left over, which means, should we do it? I think we should do it. Why not? You know, it's something I've never done before. Why not use the opportunity of this extremely light fabric? Because I don't often sew with extremely light fabrics. So that means what I'm gonna do is before I even think about the measurements of the bodice, because I don't feel like it, I'm gonna fully do the measurements and cut out the skirt. I often do this when I'm making a dress. When I'm making a dress, I very often just don't even worry about the bodice at the beginning because the bodice is more complex and takes more thought and more measurements, and a lot of times I don't wanna. I will very often just go ahead and do the skirt because whether it's a circle skirt, a rectangle skirt, whatever, as long as it's like disconnected from the bodice, as in you have a waistline, it's way easier. And it gets you flowing, you've gotten something done, you know how much fabric you have left, so it's like, you might as well. Start with the skirt. Make it easy on yourself. So we know our length measurements of how long we want the actual circle skirts to be. What we now need is our ratio. That's not the right word. Radius. Whew. We need our radius to be able to cut the waistline circle. So like I said, for me, it is usually 5. I've made enough circle skirts where I kind of just know. But here's what I do with circle skirts. I cut them bigger, yay! Especially if I'm doing split side because you want like a little bit of overlap on the sides. I also frequently just cut them bigger and add either gathering or pleats. This just means that you don't have to stress about the precision of your measurements, because what can throw you off with a circle skirt is your seam allowance. Trying to take into consideration the side seam allowance, like how much extra do you need for that? And like, how do you calculate that in? And blah, 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 blah. I prefer to not figure it out. So I just cut things a little bit bigger. In the end, if you really want it to not be gathered or pleated and still fit, you can literally match the skirt to the waistline and then just cut off the extra on the sides, you know? Or sew your side seams closer to make it fit. So I'm not saying go wildly bigger unless you legitimately want like a lot of gathering or very specific pleats. But let's say that you get the measurement of like 5.37, it's like you might as well do 5.5. Give yourself that little bit of extra. It'll probably be fine. So how do you get the measurement of a circle skirt? It is oh yeah, I made myself notes of things that I should mention while I'm doing this. One is that I did pre-wash and iron my fabric, although it looks pretty wrinkly now already. Circle skirt measurement is your waist. Oh my God, my brain is crapping out. It's your waist measurement divided by pi. Yes? Am I insane? My waist is usually 32. We're gonna go with that. Divided by 3.14? Yes, okay. I'm not insane. It is your waist measurement divided by 3.14. That gives you the diameter. So then again, you want to divide that by 2. That gives you the radius. For me, it's 5.09. So sometimes I might take that down to 5 inches. If I'm like, I want a really smooth fit and whatever, I'll make this work. I'm gonna take that up. In this case, ooh, how much do I want to take it up? I might go all the way up to 6 inches because I wouldn't mind a gentle gather. And as I measured and found out, I do have plenty of fabric. Now I just have to decide, do I want to be frugal and have a seam up the back? Or do I want to be not so frugal and do it all in the fold? I might do my very top layer, both sides on the fold. And then maybe I'll do the 2 layers under that with a seam. Because then, I don't know, because the top layer is the one that you see the most. I don't know what my reasoning is there. I don't have to have a reason for everything. But let's just start with one and go from there. One thing that's generally a good idea to do if you're cutting a circle skirt on your edge here is to clean up your edge. If this is how you got it from the store, it usually doesn't line up perfectly. If you washed it like I did, you might have a bunch of that. I don't know if that was on camera. Oh well. I sometimes don't bother cleaning up the edge because I'm like, meh, it'll be fine. But I probably should. Love a fabric with a stripe in it though, because you can just follow the stripe. Woohoo! This has a good cutting sound too. Okay. So coming from the corner here, using either a pin or actual pins, a lot of times I just use literal pins so that I don't have any marks on the fabric, because my brain likes that. I'm measuring 6 inches from the corner and just putting a little mark. This fabric is very shifty, like I said, because it's so thin. The weave is so loose. It's going to have a lot of ease. That also means it's going to shift around like crazy. So that'll be fun. Woohoo! So that is my waist measurement. And then my hem measurement would be the 12 inches plus 6 inches, 18 inches, which is the length of this ruler. So I'm going to keep using this. Woohoo! So again, just do little marks. I don't even usually bother doing them like incredibly close together. You can if you want like a super precise curve to your hem or whatever. I don't know, I kind of trust my cutting abilities. You just kind of look ahead to the next mark when you're cutting, and nothing is perfect. I will do one more here though. That was a very big gap. So that's my first layer. I'm going to throw some pins in the fabric, basically because I want to, oh wait, actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I wanted this one also on the fold, so I'm gonna go ahead and fold my fabric in half right here and just cut 2 of them at once. Oh no, that was almost death to my microphone. I gotta put that in my pocket. If you can, just cut 2 of them at once. It makes it so much easier. And since I'm doing it on the fold, I can do that. And once again, I can use the very faint stripe in this fabric to make sure it is lined up properly and not being shifty. So wahoo for that. You're being shifty. Okay, now I will throw pins in it, especially because it's so shifty, just to keep all of my layers lined up. Okay, I've put this in the worst possible direction for me to actually cut it. Ooh, so am I doing a V? That's a great question. I'm going to assume that if I am doing a V, it would involve cutting into rather than adding on. I'm going to assume that so that I can go ahead and cut this out and not worry about it right now, because woo, that's more fun. All right, so we have one layer. Why does this look weirdly too short? Did I measure really badly? Not really. Okay. Now we repeat that for layers 2 and 3, but we now have this measurement done for us, so we can just drop this on top of our fabric. Wahoo. Do I want to keep doing it on the fold? I kind of do. I have so much fabric. I think it'll be fine. If I do this and then I get to the end and I'm like, I don't have enough fabric for the bodice, which has happened before. Also, let me put this in my pocket so that I don't do the exact same thing I just almost did. It also helps for doing your, folded edge here, because I've got a stripe all the way down. Love stripes. Highly recommend if you are a new sewist working with stripes. I think for some people it would seem like that would show your mistakes more or something, but I think it just really helps when you're cutting stuff out and everything, because you can see if things are straight or not. Assuming that your fabric was woven with stripes, or at least printed straight, not like that dress I made where the stripes had been printed crooked. How long did I say this one needs to be? 6 plus 22 is 28. So I'm again gonna fold the fabric, and it's gonna be right here. I'll probably have to have a seam in the bottom layer because I don't know that I can get my half circles on this fabric with the width that I have. We will come to that in a moment though. This is often why it's kind of hard to film my process in a way that's going to be edited nicely, because my brain is always thinking about the next thing while I'm doing the thing that I'm currently doing. So I'm cutting out the middle layer, but my brain is already thinking about the last layer and whether anything needs to be different for that, which can be helpful for like anticipating problems, but also makes things very like a little confusing for like storytelling and being thorough and detailed in a video, because I'm always just like stopping randomly to be like, oh, that thing that's going to happen in 10 minutes, not the thing that's happening now. Let me have thoughts on that. All right, that's again my 2 layers. Gonna lay this on top so then I don't have to measure anything. Well, yes, I still have to measure things. I don't have to measure my waist seam. And we don't need to pin all of these together, but I'm just going to pin a couple. So this time I am measuring from the corner 28 inches and putting a mark. Oh yeah, so 28 inches is almost my full length of the fabric here. So yes, I was accurate in my presumption that I will need to put seams on the last layer because I will not be able to fit a half circle on my fabric the way I am currently doing it. So we'll get to that in a second. That actually means I can cram them closer together and just kind of like waste less fabric. It's always funny you say that because it's like I'm not going to waste the fabric anyway. All of my leftover fabric is going to go into bins to be used at future times, so it will not be wasted. But it is kind of helpful to leave yourself bigger chunks of fabric that are connected instead of weird, like, stringy, tiny bits of fabric, you know? And then we can get the waist cut out exactly the same as this one, which is even more helpful because, you know, if you're going to layer all three of these up, you really want them to kind of perfectly match. So if the first one was a little bit wrong in some way, I would rather have the next two also be wrong in the same way, you know? And I'm just going to separate this. Save this. I can cut stuff out of it in a minute, like the pockets and stuff. Last layer. I was definitely thinking I should make something really simple for this video, just so that it would be as short as possible. And then I was like, hey, let's make a 3-layered circle skirt. Perfect. What's more fun than that? So, you can't get a 32-inch half circle on here because the total measurement is going to be 38, which is longer than this, which means we have to cut this one differently. We have to fold it, goodness, this way instead. Oh yeah, so I guess there still isn't going to be seams. We're just folding the fabric differently. So I'm going to measure my 38 inches so I can basically just not waste any fabric. So I can be folding like right on that 38. So essentially right there. Oh God, I forgot I'm gonna have to French seam all of this. That's fine, it's fine. I usually remember that about halfway through cutting anything out of woven fabric. And I still have a general idea of like, oh, that's gonna be tough. It really won't. I'm very used to doing French seams now. I don't really find them difficult anymore, but sometimes my brain is still like, oh, it's gonna be so hard. It won't. It'll be fine. Okay, come on. Be good to me. Did I give myself enough here? I might not have. So this is now our fold, instead of our fold being on one of these sides. And I do need to make sure that I can fit 38 inches. Ugh. Okay. So right here, I'm going over my cut here. So I did not fold myself enough. Let me do like that much more is probably enough. Let's check. Nope, still not enough. Okay. That should do it though. One more time. Ugh. You'll get the exciting insight of how long it actually takes to lay your fabric flat. Isn't this what we all wanted to know? Okay, I think that'll do it. So again, gonna lay this on top. I'm flipping it over this time because I do like to always, well, nope, that's a lie. I didn't do it last time. Did I? What's happening here? Oh, wow, okay. I just got majorly confused. Fold, fold, not a fold, not a fold. Fold, fold. Oh, my second panel is just fully connected on this side. How did that happen? I don't know. Anyway, laying this on top again. That's what we're doing. With a shifty fabric like this, you really have to make sure that your curve up here, if you're doing this kind of thing where you use the curve as a guide again, you have to make sure that it hasn't like flattened out when you lay it down. You need it to go back to its originally curved shape. Takes a little futzing sometimes. My voice just caught in my throat. But also, it helps to remember perfection is not possible. Okay. But now we are measuring, oh God, come up here. 38 from the corner. This is where even this table starts to be too small. Mm-hmm. You gotta have a good reach. Oh, Lord. Oh, let's not do that. Yeah, I'd rather do that than walk around the table. Good times. All right, oop. Y'all, I'm gonna do that so many times. I really need to get one of the wireless ones. It would be safer for me. One more time. I know, we're thrilled, but I said I wouldn't cut anything out. Except the fabric. I am cutting out the fabric. I am going to take this off though, and just use this as a guide for the next one. Which means I need to pin it together so that it will not shift around on me. I originally bought this plaid. It's at one of the stores, one of the fabric stores around the Southern California area. If you go up from LA, there's, I want to say it's, they both have initial names. One of them is F&M Fabrics, M&L Fabrics, M&S Fabrics. There's one that's up from LA and there's one that's down from LA, both like kind of hours outside. But I've visited both of these stores because I was curious as to what they had. Anyway, I got this fabric at one of those stores. That is my story. But I got it because the plaid colors were so unique to me, you know? I have never seen a yellow, purple, and green plaid. So I thought that was fun. Whew, lordy, are we going to have enough fabric? We should, logically. But I am cutting it close, not gonna lie. Even my lackadaisical measurements, I think, were technically too lackadaisical and not accurate. Because technically, I measured 40 inches down the fabric, but I didn't take into account the fact that the width of the fabric was no longer enough for what I was doing. Oh, that's so close. A little bit more. I don't know if that made sense, but hopefully that made sense. I will have enough for these three skirt tiers. but I am not leaving myself much to do the bodice with. I think it'll be fine because comparatively, your bodice is just so little fabric. But yeah, so much for my haul. We don't need to worry about running out of fabric. I got one that's very, oh, that's a problem. I got one that's very long so that we wouldn't have to worry about that. Did you now? Great. So what I might do is put a seam down the back middle panel so that I can actually fit it. Good times. That just means I'm cutting the 2/4 separately. And when I'm doing that using something I've already cut out like this, yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. I basically am just lining it up with an extra 1/2 inch on this edge because that's that center seam. So instead of putting this directly up against the edge, although actually I'm going to do it with that edge, but you get my point. Rather than putting it directly against the edge where it would normally go, I'm just leaving myself a little extra fabric there. Not that much though, that was too much. To account for the fact that we're going to have to throw a seam in there. Tickling me. Dog fur. Okay, so just to be safe, before I cut this out, I am just going to take a look at my remaining fabric and guesstimate whether I can get another one of these on there. Ooh, or could I actually fold it? Sometimes you can do this, which is kind of crazy on a fabric this shifty, but let's try it. This is like a diagonal folding method that I don't normally like to do because it's hard to get it really perfectly lined up. See, I'm buckling there. that is potentially problematic. This is the part where we problem solve, because I've cut myself into a corner. I think I do this because I literally enjoy problem solving. Like, I could sit here and map everything out ahead of time and not run into problems like this. But problem solving is fun. Okay. So that's about where we're coming from to fit 38 still. Which means it fits here. We are actually good. It fits there. Okay. I can indeed fit another panel on here. It just wasn't folding, which is why I don't really like the folding method, because it doesn't really give an accurate image of how much fabric you have. The saving grace, if I don't have enough fabric for the bodice, is that I can line it with a different fabric, which would be great, you know? There's definitely enough in my leftover bits here to get the outer layers of everything that I need. So I'm not super concerned about it because, yeah, if it's not enough to get both the outer and the lining layers, I will just go pull another fabric and we'll line it with something different. It is usually my specialty, though, to get the biggest skirts possible out of whatever amount of fabric I have. And we're doing it again. I think. trust this. This does not look big enough. But I think it just barely is. Let's do this. So now we are legit cutting our final panel for the skirt. Let's see if it actually fits. Oh my God, I think just barely. Do I think wrong? No, I don't think wrong. This does fit. Let's do a good old shake. Whew. It's like magic. How did that even work out? It is a little crazy how often it feels like things just work out if you just go for it in the world of sewing, drafting, draping, stuff like that. But it is possible that other people would consider what I consider to be things working out to very much be things not working out. I just don't mind pivoting. Like, I don't know. I think I don't usually have really specific images of what I want in my head. So then if things need to change and I need to pivot, it's like, okay, that's fine. Like, doesn't matter. All right, with inches to spare, we have managed to get the final panel. Okay, we have the third layer of the skirt. And the second and the first layer. Yeah, that's not that heavy altogether. That is so much fabric, but it still weighs like nothing. So this was definitely the right kind of fabric to do a 3-tiered skirt on. My camera is very warm. Let's hope that's not a problem. All right, here is the fabric we have left. It's not much. I did not exactly help myself here. But this is why I didn't really want to get super into the bodice until I cut out the skirts, because there's a possibility, ooh, one of my mics is going to die. There's a possibility that I will have to change my bodice design according to how much fabric I have left over. if you just do littler pieces to your pattern, you can fit them on your littler pieces of fabric. But this is still a decent amount of fabric. It's not bad. This is 2 layers here. We got a pretty good chunk here. Like, holding this up to myself, it's bigger than my bodice, which means I should be able to get like the entire back and possibly even one of the fronts cut out of this. So I'm not super concerned. I am concerned that my mic is about to die though, so let me change that. Okay, we're all good. I would normally cut out the pockets next because it's the next easiest thing to cut out. The measurements are very imprecise. It's easy. However, when I am lightly concerned about my remaining fabric, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go straight for the pockets because the pockets are hidden and could potentially be worked out of tinier pieces or even a different fabric. So we're back to bodice measurements. Hello, my love. You're so pretty. The puppy has awoken. Let's start with the back because it is easier. Thread. We first can get the measurement of our shoulder seam. I'm gonna assume it's a regular crew neck, kind of comes to here on you. A dropped shoulder is just going to barely hang over my shoulder bone. Let me turn towards the camera here. I hope I'm not squishing my mic. So here-ish is 6 inches. And then I only need seam allowance. I don't need hemming allowance because it's getting lined. So I'm going to write this down without seam allowance, and I will mark it on the fabric without seam allowance, probably, and then I will cut the seam allowance in. I change my methods with that all the time. Sometimes I do like seam allowance in my original measurements. It doesn't matter that much. Do whatever floats your boat in the moment. But we have our shoulder seams, 6 inches. That applies to both the front and the back pieces. So look at that. We just got so many lines accounted for. Wahoo. The neck diameter, I don't know why I'm still holding 6. This is a super imprecise way of doing it because you're curving around your own neck here, but like, I don't care that much. It's fine. I have 9. You can do it from the back and it's more precise. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at 9 because again, it's a non-stretch fabric, so we need a decently big neck hole to actually get over our head. So that's the diameter of our neck hole. I'm not that concerned about the depth of it. I will probably literally wing that as I cut it. Usually on the back, if you're doing like crew neck kind of style, your depth of the U is maybe like 2 inches. On the front, it's more like 3 or 4. You don't have to care that much, but you do need the diameter, which is 9. Again, that applies to both the front and the back piece. Now we need our overall length of the garment. This I'm going to measure from sort of my peak where that shoulder seam would start. Butterfly. Sorry, distracted by butterfly outside. Hello. Shoulder seam. So like where the neck and the shoulder meet is a good place to measure from, especially because in the front, that means it's going to go right over le boob. So in the front, going to my waist, I have a very high waist. That measurement is 19 inches. The back should be a little bit less because of the lack of curve there. It's 16 inches. Also, I will say, I, again, tend to be pretty imprecise. So you'll see that I'm just kind of choosing the placement of my waist, you can like put a ribbon around your waist, or, you know, make sure that you're wearing something like a pair of pants or something that sits exactly on your waist, so that when you're measuring yourself, you're always hitting that exact same mark. I just don't care that much right now. It's not that big of a deal. So my front length was 19, my back length is 16. Now we need to know where the dropped shoulder, aka the arm's eye, should stop and the side seam should start. Now keep in mind the shoulder seam is angled, usually by like 1 inch. It doesn't need to be that much. So, whereas the measurement from here to the waist was 16, the measurement from here to the waist is only going to be 15. Yeah? Granted, there's a curve to the arm. No, that doesn't matter that much, does it? I don't know. Nothing matters that much. Y'all just wing all of it. I got 11 inches, so the length of my dropped shoulder is going to be 11 inches. That's once again for the front and the back. Now, if we subtract that from our 16, complete with the little 1 inch up above, so basically 12 out of 16, that means we would have 4 inches left for right here. That seems too small. If we actually measure right here, from under the armpit to my waist, I have 7 inches. Why is that inaccurate? Because of diagonals, actually. So don't worry about that much too much. This is why I have so much trouble making tutorials. This makes sense. It does. So the side seam measurement is 7 inches. Now, granted, we're not going to have a side seam there. But that's still a measurement that we want. It's an inner measurement rather than a cutting or edge measurement. So again, that should be 7 inches on both sides. Even though our overall length is longer on the front, the side seam length is still the same, 7 inches. Which means if we want to slope our front piece down to a 6-inch back, that's not very much of a slope. I might even slope it down to a 5-inch. So we'll just say 5 to 6 inches right now, and I'll look at that on the fabric and see what it looks like. So we kind of just need a round measurements now. So the back piece goes entirely around because it ties in the front, but you don't actually want it to meet in the front, or it's not adjustable anymore because you can't make it any tighter. You want the back piece to kind of end, I'm gonna say like here, and you want the rest to be ties, because that means you can both adjust it tighter and looser. So I'm gonna say that my back piece should be 28 inches long, and the rest will be ties. And I want that slope to come down basically as small as possible, but once again, that's something I'll look at on the fabric. That's all of my back measurements. So then my front piece, I want to come around kind of to the same place. It might also be 28 inches because I don't want it to meet in the back. I want there to be enough space for adjustability and for some good lacing. I'm gonna do it the same. I'm gonna do 28 inches. But the darts, we must remember the darts. The puppy just did a weird cough burp. So it's 28 inches with the darts sewn closed. Up here, if I go from side seam to side seam across my bust, it's 22 inches. That's also a measurement that we want. I think I'm going to do each of my darts 2 inches there's a way to kind of figure this out. Hi, what's up? Do you want to come here? Come here. Hi, you want to join us? So the 28 inches is the measurement for this piece, but it's not a normal accurate side seam to side seam measurement. So if I do my waist side seam to side seam, it should be 16. Let's see if I've changed. Oh, 18. Interesting. Let's say it's 18. So if this is 22 and this is 18, the difference, this is why. See, I already knew it needed to be 2 inches each. The difference is 4 inches. So I'm going to make two 2-inch darts. And that should theoretically work. And I'm not going to make myself think any deeper about why that should work. I'm just not. Now, if we wanted to do a V-waist, that's a whole other thing. I will figure that out on the fabric if we're going to do that. What we do need to know is where the darts are placed, which I would say is from boob to boob. So I'm going to put 6 inches in between the darts. The darts are 2 inches each, which means the overall measurement of my front piece should be 32 instead of 28 because we are adding 4 inches. I think that was everything I need for that too. Let's see if we can get that cut out. I think it might fit on here. The back piece might. Oh God, sorry. Okay, chair in the way. So, the question is the question that? I don't think I can fit anything on this. What am I talking about? This is ridiculous. This is not tall enough. The question in my brain was which direction I wanted the plaid to be going, but I think I don't have enough fabric left to be super concerned about that. I think the plaid needs to go in whatever direction I can fit pieces on here for. So the height of my back panel was 16 inches. And the width is 6 plus 6 plus 9, which is 21 inches. Yes. So no, I cannot fit it on this piece. So this piece will hopefully become the pockets and the ties and all of that stuff. Where did I put my other fabric? Come here. Nothing's fitting on that. What if this suddenly became, let's make a split side skirt? For no reason, don't worry about it. It was totally the plan all along. Yeah, okay. So the concerning thing here is normally if you're cutting out like a fitted bodice, it can be a lot of small pieces and it's not that much fabric. When you're cutting out a split side dress bodice, you're essentially cutting out kind of 2 to start with. Like my front bodice and my back bodice are not fully covering, but they are overlapping each other. So they are each bigger than a typical bodice piece would be. There's no way I'm going to get the lining cut out of this. So that's fun. But I do think I can get both my front and my back piece cut out. What I need to measure is those length measurements, which was 32 and 28, 40, 50, 60. That is a 60-inch measurement altogether. If I have 60 inches here, then I think I'm good. Because how tall is this? Yeah, because it's 20 inches tall. and my highest measurement is 19. So it would kind of be perfectly good. Do I have 60 inches? Why is this a mess? I do have 60 inches. All right, so I am gonna be able to barely get my front and my back piece on here. I might cut out my lining pieces off camera after I'm done here because they will just be copies of whatever this is. And I'm gonna have to go dig through my fabric stash and choose a fabric. What I want is a fold. I'm gonna go ahead and fold this way. I kind of like folding with the outside of my fabric on the inside because then I can just put marks wherever I want. Like all of them are gonna come out with heat anyway. They shouldn't leave any ghost marks on this fabric, but it's just like, you know, just in case they do, it's on the inside instead of the outside. So half of my back measurement is 14 plus seam allowance, so I'm gonna do 15. There's already a great curve right here from my skirt, so I might kind of use that. I need 9 inches to be yeah, I think I can use that quite a bit. Cool. That means I can kind of shove my back piece into this little curved bit here and just, you know, fit as much on here as possible. So let's say that this is yeah, okay. Okay. All right, so I've got my fold in my fabric to be the center fold of my back panel, my back bodice. Everything's lined up as much as possible. Now we're gonna start transferring those measurements onto the fabric. Do you want a different camera angle to watch this? Let me give you one. It might be bad. Sorry. Every time I do this angle, I end up putting my arm in front so much and then it just like focuses on my shoulder. So we'll try to make that not happen. So we're going off my measurements right here, off screen. Sorry about that. You wouldn't be able to read them anyway. It's just white. So my height is 16 inches. I'm going to measure with kind of an extra, probably an extra inch down here, because I like to be safe. So I will just measure 17 inches. And then my neck height is, or my neck width is going to be 4.5. Again, I'm marking this without seam allowance with the exception of what I just added on the bottom. So 4.5. Oh, well, that was dumb. You can't do that. All right. My folding was not smart. I kind of forgot about the top part. Top part of your thingy. What is my width up here? I said it and then I immediately forgot it. So it's 6 plus 4.5, which is 10.5 plus seam allowance. So it's at least 11 inches that we need up here, regardless of the slope on the bottom. That's still only 10. That's 11. So okay. Now I have 11 inches up here, which is what I need. Let me quickly make sure that I still have enough on the other side to make my front piece. Yeah, I think we should be good. Okay. Anyway, 17 inches up. Then we want 4.5 inches out. And then we want 6 inches out from there. But we want a 1 inch slope. So that's where we're aiming. That's our shoulder seam. Let's say our back neck is 2 inches down. Again, I will freehand this because it doesn't matter that much. Just make sure you're getting actually straight where it meets the fold, or else you're gonna have like a little pointed cut. So that's our crew neck in the back. Now down here we have basically 18 inches. The total measurement is 28, but as I measured it, it's about 18 inches from side seam to side seam, which means 9 inches from here. And that is where we want that 7-inch up measurement. Again, I added an inch on the bottom, so now it's 8 inches up. That's where our sleeve should come to. So I know we measured this as 11, but it's gonna end up being whatever it is. That was kind of the most unimportant measurement. It's about 8. We're gonna go with that. And then here is where we want it to start curving out. And the ultimate measurement we're aiming for is 28, which is here. So that's actually not long, and this is why you get sort of the weird trying to make it cover while also curving down is kind of hard because it's a pretty fast curve here. So I'm gonna not make that a super sharp angle. I'm gonna curve this a little bit sooner rather than having it cut into that corner, because we don't need it to cut into the corner because we don't have an actual side seam. And then I would normally have this come down to like 1 inch, but because I added an extra inch on the bottom, I am actually gonna do it as 2 inches. So that's actually where we're aiming, is here, which I should have noted before I started drawing stuff. See, this is why I like to do it on the back, because now I have weird lines everywhere, but that's fine. So that's my curve that I kind of freehanded in here. Right here, it comes to here. This was all without seam allowance. You can't see anything on here, but this is not a tutorial, so sorry. This is all without seam allowance. So when I cut this out, I will cut an extra 1/2 inch around everything. I gave myself the seam allowance down here, so I don't have to worry about that. And then here on the end, I'll probably cut an extra inch at least, because I like to cut everything bigger. So that was it though. That's the back panel. Not too hard. That worked out. I'm gonna throw some pins in it to keep everything lined up so it won't shifty around. And let's cut it out. Cool. That's our back panel. Let's do the front. And I'm going to leave this nice and pinned because when I cut out the lining, I'm just going to be cutting this out again. There will be no measurements. It will just be this laid on top so that the lining is an exact match. What are you doing here? Who are you? Why are you here? So on the other side, let me move you again. That should work. Other side, front bodice. Once again, we want a fold so that our two sides will match perfectly. Let me come down into the frame. And we're once again aiming for, let's say 15 inches on the bottom. I think we're good up top because there's no like deep cuts or anything. A deep cut. Okay. Once again, using our measurements that we just came up with, our front is a 19-inch height. I'm going to do the same thing where I add an extra inch. My ruler only does 18 inches, but you know what? I'm going to wing it. So that's 19 inches. My neck width is still 4.5. And actually, you know what you can do here, just to be like exactly the same, is you can lay your other piece on top. And you can even get like the exact same seam allowance. So if I want this to perfectly match up, because this is the only place where my front and my back piece are sewn together, this doesn't matter as much because they're not sewn to each other, but this does. So I can actually just mark this exactly as it is. Now I have to remember that that already has seam allowance on it, goody, but if this is already marked, then it's going to be exactly the right match for this piece. So kind of just makes it easier. But now in the front, how deep of a neckline do we want? I'm gonna do 3 inches, but not cut a seam allowance. Does that make sense? No, but it's how I'm gonna do it. I usually end up cutting my necklines differently once I'm sewing the piece together, because you can. So make your neckline smaller, and then once you start sewing stuff together, before you actually sew this together with the lining, you can just cut it down and make it fit better and do whatever you want. Good times. So my bust measurement was 22, which means it needs to be 11 here. This is the point where it starts being different than the back. So we want this to kind of still come out to 11. And down here, we have the good old darts. Which is where the extra inch that I gave myself down here comes in handy, because normally if you're doing an actual pattern that like has planned this out and stuff, they'll have sort of like V lines around where the dart goes, because when you fold the fabric to sew the dart, you get like a V shape on the bottom. I don't draft that in. I just let it be there and I cut it off later. So giving myself extra space on the bottom, especially if I'm going to put in darts, is very helpful for that. But again, we want 6 inches, which would be 3 inches here because we're on a fold, and then 2 inches for the dart, and then the remaining is math. That's 5. Half of 32 is 16. So we have 11 inches remaining after that. How is that not exact? Oh, because I forgot to fold this properly. Dang it! You know what? Nope, that's too risky. All right, well, that's on me. I'm gonna flip this over so that these markings don't throw me off. But I did 28 inches down here. I forgot that my front panel is 32 inches, so I need this to be folded more than it is currently folded. Whoopsies. Okay, so we're basically starting over. Now I have extra. It's over 18 inches long, which is plenty. So we're gonna once again measure up 18, 19 inches. Nope, 19 was the original. I actually went 20 inches. So I'm glad I did that because I didn't do that right either. So I actually went 20 inches here. 4.5 inches out. Now we lay this over. Like so. I should note that I'm lining up my line on here with my dot because this is seam allowance. Because I don't think I did that last time either. So, you know. Sometimes it's good to have to start over because I remember a bunch of crap that I just did wrong. Goody. So there's my shoulder seam. We're going 3 inches down, drawing in that curve however we want. Back to where we were. So now, what did I say? 3 inches on the bottom, another 2 inches for the dart, and then 11 inches after that, and another, I'm giving myself another inch of seam allowance there. I tend to do that on like the back and front of garments, give myself like an extra ½ inch of bumper space. I don't really know why, but it does come in handy sometimes because my measurements are not always right. So this is still 8 inches up from the halfway point, which would be 11 inches. That's the halfway point. And by halfway, I mean not at all halfway. And that is 11 inches. Look at that. It's always nice when things are correct. So here's where you get the extra space. Remember on the back, my line here, well, you don't have to remember, it's right here. My line here was only 8 inches on the back, basically my arm's eye. Here on the front, it's going to be significantly more because this is the part of the fabric that is going over my bust. So this is how it ends up working somehow. I don't always have explanations for why it works. I just kind of know that it does work. So this is gonna come down like so. You'll notice it's much less diagonal. It's much more straight this time. And then it's curving. How tall did I say I wanted this to be? I said 6 inches. So 7. Ooh, yeah, that's too tall. So we're gonna do 5. but it's essentially, like, that's way too tight of a curve. It would be jump, jump. That's basically a right angle, which is not really the look I'm going for. So this, I'm going to curve much more gently, because why not? And then we have our extra inch of seam allowance there, which I'm going to go ahead and draw in because I already have seam allowance everywhere else on this one. Yeah. So here's something that I will note. I am already aware that this is not the proper way to do a dart. When you fold this up to make the dart, this changes. What you get is a bit of an angle right here. It'll go whoomp, whoomp. So normally, again, this is why I avoid darts, you need like extra space, you need to make a pattern piece, you need to do a lot of stuff with darts. I'm just not going to. I also did not even measure how tall my darts need to be, which I should probably do. Measuring from my waist, they should be like 4 inches tall, but I gave an extra inch, so 5. So if I were gonna that's not even. Whatever, I will do my darts when I'll like measure them properly when I'm actually sewing it together, but essentially I'm going to do 2 inches across, 4 inches tall. Y'all see how lackadaisical my measurements are? But this is my front piece. This is good to go, in theory. I'm going to once again pin it together at various points, and then we will cut it out. Okay, that is the front, that is the back. Let me change your angle again. So I am not at all guaranteeing that this is actually accurate. Again, this is why I don't do tutorials or actual classes and stuff like this. I'm showing you my process right now, but part of my process is usually that stuff is wrong, and you just have to fix it when you're in the sewing process. So I will tell you via some voiceover while I'm sewing this together if any of this ended up being wrong. If I'm gonna anticipate something right now, I think I'm not gonna get the coverage on the armpit that I actually want. Just judging from this, I think it's gonna be a little lower than I actually want it to be. Oh well, we live and we learn. So both of these pieces, once we're all done here, I will smack onto some lining material. I'm gonna go see if I have anything that's similar to this in like feel, and I will just cut out a second one exactly the same. But first, we have some other pieces that we still need. What's left? Pockets and a bunch of little rectangles, essentially. Let's start with the pockets. Actually, here's the thing. If I put a seam up the center of my lining panel, this is the kind of sneaky piecing you could do. I would rather use this fabric. So if I did my lining panels in 2 pieces and just put a seam down the center, which would not matter because it's on the inside, would not matter at all. Can I get it out of this fabric is the question I'm asking myself right now. Let's start with the front because it's bigger. Ooh, it's really close. Dude. Okay, that's annoyingly close. This is lining up like it would fit, except I didn't give myself any seam allowance for that seam. So, no, it kind of doesn't fit. What if I flip it the other way? Is it magically better? Oh, is it magically better? No, it's not. But I think I could actually get the back one. I can. Okay. Is it worthwhile cutting the back lining out of this fabric if I have to cut the front lining out of a different fabric? I'm pretty sure I have some yellow gauze. That would kind of be perfect. Like it would actually blend and be the same type of fabric. But I could cut the back piece. What are my other pieces here? Is there anything that I could fit? That's not big enough, is it? No. It is surprising how much, that is again really close to being big enough. It's surprising how much you can squeeze out of your fabric if you just get really sneaky about it. Oh, that was very thin. Okay, but no. Despite all my sneakiness, I cannot get a front piece lining out of this. So I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it and I'm gonna do them both matching lining materials. Okay, we're back to what we were doing, which is pockets. Pockets, super easy, because they can be whatever you want them to be. How about, we'll do a little more than that. I like to just fold stuff up if I can, or layer fabric on top of each other, especially when it's shifty, and cut it all at once for the pockets. Again, you need 4 layers. I tend to go really deep, like 16 inches. That's pretty normal for me. That's 5 across the top. Let's give myself a little more. I also do enjoy using the selvage edges where I can, because you don't have to finish that seam. So if it's gonna be somewhere that's like hidden inside, I don't know, why not use it, you know? I might not use it here, I might still French seam that edge, but it's there if I want it. So let's cut across the bottom first. And like, as you can see, I'm not even measuring this. I think the important thing to note is that your pockets are coming from your side seams here, and they need to match up with your bodice on the top. So I had what? The back bodice was 28, 18 out of that 10. So they need to only be 5 inches at the top, or else they will run past the amount of bodice that I have, which would be weird to sew together. Other than that, it can kind of be whatever they want. So 5 inches is right there. Granted, I'm cutting it 5 inches. I'll probably need to cut it down a little bit because I need seam allowance. So, you know, it's fine though. It's easy to cut off little bits while you're actually in the sewing process. And then I usually just do sort of a curved seam on this side. Bam. That's my pockets. At this point, I try to start throwing really small scraps in a separate pile just so that I don't get them confused. I know for sure, like, I can't get anything out of that. So the ties for the back, we do need them to be 2 separate ties. They're just going to be skinny little pieces, and this should be long enough. This is 16 inches. That's plenty. Again, you don't want it to be super lumpy, so I'm just going to cut out probably a bigger, wider strip than I need, and again, I will cut it down later. Doing these on the bias is helpful sometimes, but just because when you are turning out a pretty thin tube, it's way easier to do it if it was cut on the bias. This is such a shifty fabric, I'm not super concerned about it. So that is the back ties that are tying in the front. We also need loops for the actual back of the bodice. I'm just going to keep using this because it's here. So I will just cut some more strips, and I can cut these down to the size I want. That should be enough. If you think like each one is about that much, 1, 2, 3, that's at least 4 from each of these. The last thing that we need is an actual like long tie to go through there, which I might not be able to get out of what I have here because I don't have any long pieces left. You could definitely piece this together from a bunch of different ones. Let's see what this is. This might be my longest piece. Yeah, I might be able to get it out of there. And it would be on the bias then, so easier to turn right side out. I usually kind of guess at this, and honestly, you don't even have to make this out of the fabric. Like, your releasing tie can be a ribbon, it can be some cord, it can be anything. I'm just going to take, I have this thin part in the fabric right here. I'm going to use that as my guide for how wide to make the strip. And then I'm just going to fold the whole thing in half, sort of on the diagonal. So I have as much length as possible. If we measure that now, I've got 37 times 2. That's plenty long enough. And then I'm going to totally wing it. I don't know if over time you get better at cutting a straight line without like marking it first, or if I'm not actually better at it and I just don't care. That's a super tiny piece. That's a pretty small piece. I'm gonna fold it again. Less cutting is nice. Okay, that's my tie for the back. That was everything, y'all. We did it, and I didn't take 4 hours because the camera's still going. Wahoo. So I will get that lining cut out. I don't think you need to see that. You get what's happening. And then we'll get to sewing. And yay, we're back to actually editing the video. Good times. Let's do it. I did indeed have the yellow gauze that I was thinking of, slightly different shade to the main fabric, but it'll totally work. And don't worry about the wrinkles, I'll iron them out in a second, it'll be fine. Since this video is not a tutorial and not really about the sewing together portion, y'all asked for the pattern drafting process, not the sewing process. I'm going to go through this sewing section pretty fast, mainly pointing out where I had to alter things according to how I cut them out. I started with the simple stuff, making all the long rectangles into right side out tubes. Then I put the shoulder seams together on the 2 lining pieces and started futzing with the fit. The neck hole definitely needed to be bigger, but then I realized that the front piece was much too long in comparison with the back. So much for that measurement of mine making sense. It doesn't. I therefore removed 2 inches from the shoulder of the front piece and then cut the neckline down again to be about 5 inches deep. Mimicked those cuts on the outer front bodice, and then I started constructing the whole bodice, sewing the neckline of the lining and the outer piece together, and then using the burrito method to sew the 2 long side seams. I could then add the ties to the back piece and the tie loops to the front piece, and that's basically the bodice finished. I'll probably add top stitching, especially since this fabric is so shifty, but I'll need to do that after the skirt is attached. So yeah, that skirt. One thing I had totally forgotten to consider in advance is that the split-side nature of this design means the 3 separate tiers can't fully be separate from each other, but rather need to be sewn into the side seam, I think. Or okay, they don't have to be sewn into the side seam, they can be separate, but that would definitely be the easier way to construct this skirt. I spent quite a while debating if I wanted to go with the more complex construction that would allow each tier to fly freely, and finally decided, yeah, fine, okay, I'll do the more complicated version. Also, it's still the same day, I just kept changing because it is so weirdly warm. I attached the pockets in my normal way to just the undermost layer, the longest one, and then hemmed the edges of both the upper layers, pinned them all together at the top, and then pinned that to the back bodice. The difference in measurement ended up being rather small, not enough to really need any gathering, so I just carefully eased it across the top. I'd rather sit here pinning and repinning at this stage and maybe throwing a little pleat in one of the layers where I have to, than try to get the absolute perfect measurement while drafting and risk having it too small. So yeah, that's why I do it this way. Now it actually is the next day, but I didn't change. What fun. With the back skirt fully attached, I moved on to the front skirt, which is more of the same, sans pockets, just a lot of hemming the sides and sewing it on. So much fun, whee! I only remembered the whole, maybe let's do it a V waistline thing as I was sewing the skirt to the bodice. So I guess that's going back on my list of things I still need to try. I tried the whole thing on and had Matt lace me up in the back so that I could get an idea of how the sides were falling and how I should attach them. In the end, I decided to just sew the longest layer of the skirt only up to the bottom of the pocket. Nothing else really made sense with the way the front is meant to overlap the back so that the whole thing is actually adjustable. And with a bit of top stitching and a whole lot of hemming, that was the end of that. Let's take a look at how she turned out. You can tell I've made my pocket openings too small if I'm struggling to get the mic pack into it. Okay. I gotta go back to making big ol' pocket openings because I kind of forgot about, like, putting books in my pocket. If you've got a giant pocket that can hold a book, you gotta be able to get the book in there, you know? Opening-wise. This is definitely the most impractical split-side dress I've ever made, mainly because of the lacing in the back thing. I love the look of it, and it is really adjustable, but you kind of need a second person to lace you up in the back. I could kind of do it. In a pinch, I could do it. It would not be, graceful. And then also the tiered skirt thing. Technically, it just doesn't really work with the split side design where you're supposed to be able to let your skirt sides overlap each other. And then if you want like a tiered skirt where all of your tiers will flounce out separately, they can't have a split in the middle of them. It works. I still think it looks really cool. Other than like hey, it's kind of impractical, I'm really pleased with how it turned out. I got the right amount of coverage on the side that I wanted here. I like the fit of it and everything. I think it looks really fun. And this fabric is super interesting. It's pretty much a gauze. So it's a very loose weave, which makes it very shifty. So there's things that don't necessarily look super great, like the back neckline is like folding under itself. There's even like a wrinkle on this front neckline, and I feel like it shows up really strongly in this fabric and was caused originally because the fabric just shifts around. It's very hard to like sew it really neatly. However, I don't really mind any of that. It's just interesting to note. But because it's so extremely light, this dress is very light. It barely has any weight to it at all, even though the skirt has 3 full circles. That's pretty impressive. So it's definitely going to be a great summer dress. I mean, again, as I mentioned before, it is October, almost the end of October right now, and we're having like August weather outside. It's hot. We have turned the air conditioning back on. So it's a great October dress if you live in Southern California with weird warm spells. The only thing that is actually wrong with it that I do need to fix is the pocket openings. I don't know why, but I made them way too small. I can barely fit my hand in there. But yeah, if you are here at the end, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you made it this far without skipping through the massive, middle chunk, even bigger kudos to you. I really just am doing this and putting this video up because it has been requested. Not by that many people, quite frankly, but by enough people that I'd love to provide it for you. I don't expect anyone to actually, watch this video for entertainment. But, you want to see what my actual process is like? That was it. Things changed along the way numerous times. I think I had new design ideas. I can't even remember, multiple times. Some that happened at the end, like the tiered skirt, some that didn't happen in the end. I thought I wasn't gonna have trouble with fabric amount, and then I did. So that's what the process is actually like. And that's why I cut out so much of it. But I hope seeing the whole thing right there in front of you with no cuts was maybe helpful in some way. I don't know, but now it's here, so good times.